name's Merisha Clark. Did you say it correctly?
I did, yes. I thought it was Merisha, and I thought, well, maybe it's Merisha, but anyway.
It's Merisha Clark, and my maiden name is Limmer, and I'm a Choctaw. I'm living in the Pacific Northwest, and it's a beautiful, cold, rainy day today.
Oh, well, we're so glad to have you join us today. Why don't you tell us, how did you get started as an illustrator? Although I should say, illustrating children's books is not the only thing that you do. So maybe just in general, how you came to be an artist, and then what led you specifically to children's books.
So, what was the first endeavor to be a children's book illustrator? I believe it was just before I went into high school, and I was in a seminar with my parents, and we were creating ourselves from nothing, where it wasn't based on any achievements that we've already had or expectations or anything. And it was really just, what do you want to create? And I was like, I want to be an artist. I declare myself an artist. And then I started doing artwork. When I went into high school, I signed up for every art class that I could. And my senior project in high school was to illustrate a children's book. That was the first one that I did. And going back a few years, my mom encouraged me to go to a school called the Oxbow School, and it's in Napa, and it's an art-based program. It's 3 months, and I went there and just learned so much and really just like immersed myself in what it was to be an artist, creating art, thinking like an artist, where you kind of think outside the box and you really observe your surroundings. You do a lot of observation. I feel as an artist, there's a lot of like taking inspiration from the little things in life.
And then what is it like doing the children, because we mostly focus on children's books, what is that like different than other kinds of artistic projects that you do? How is the book illustrations kind of different from that?
So a lot of times when I'm doing book illustrations, children's book illustrations, the stories don't have a lot of the extra story in there. And so it's basically the interaction of the text kind of between the characters, and then the illustrations. I really have to think of what's going on behind the scenes. What kind of animals do they have? What kind of environment are they in? What are they doing? So that's a particular challenge with doing children's book illustrations.
Right, yeah. because we've talked a lot to people who specifically do picture books, that one of the main things they try to do is not have a lot of text. But from your side of it, that means that you don't have a lot to work with as far as what the author had in mind. Although, is that kind of fun because it kind of gives you a little freedom to kind of bring your own vision into the story?
Sometimes I just really love that I get to bring my own context to it. And sometimes I really struggle to be like, I'm just not coming up with anything.
Well, what was it like working? I don't remember. Did the cloud artist come first, or was it the Lela and the butterflies? I don't remember which one you did first.
The cloud artist came first, and that was really wonderful. I got to work with Sherri Maret, and she's just an amazing woman. And through the process of illustrating the book and talking with her, we found out that we were cousins.
That is amazing.
I know.
I just love that, because you're Choctaw, as you said, and she had, I think, is it through her grandmother? She's also Choctaw, and that's amazing.
Yeah, and then actually it was really fun in that book. I got to include a picture of my ancestors, of my great-great-grandfather Adam. Wow. And you can see it, maybe the third page.
I was just looking to see where. Is that
the black and white photograph?
This one?
Yes.
Oh, I don't think that's who that was. So that's an actual photograph. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got to incorporate that in there.
That's so special. Well, that's what I was going to ask you about, because this is, if I remember it, this is actually a story inspired by a Choctaw tale. And so how was that for you? That must have been really special to get to work on something like this.
Oh yeah, it was very special. It was great. It was one of her family stories that she made into a book. That was pretty inspirational for me as well. Because I have worked on some of my grandfather's stories. His name is Dro Wilkin.
Oh, we just lost your audio for some reason.
Did I freeze?
Sorry. Yeah, just for a minute. So you said you've worked on some of your grandfather's stories?
Yeah, yeah. So I've worked on some of my grandfather's stories, just spot illustrations for each of his stories. And then when she came to me, or when the publisher came to me and said, "Hey, there's a Choctaw story we're working on," I was like, "Ah, that was so exciting."
Have you gotten to work with other like Indigenous creators and other works that you've done?
Not with children's books. I worked with Teaching Tolerance magazine in 2009 and illustrated a full page illustration for them for the Bitterroot Salish. And it was an article about the Bitterroot Salish and their land. So nice. I did get to do that. I look forward to doing more Choctaw stories, more Native stories. Yeah, I'm really working on one with my mom and my husband right now. Yeah, it will be the first book that I've written and illustrated as soon as I get done.
Can you tell us something about it?
Yeah, so it's called The White Buffalo Child.
Okay.
At least that's the working title right now.
Okay.
And I kind of just have the bones of it. It's about inspiration from the white buffalo of bringing peace and understanding through all tribes, all nations. And so I'm kind of writing it from the perspective of a little kid kind of creating that for themselves and creating that in the world. And I'm writing it so it's gender neutral terms, and the vision for the character is like very neutral, little Native child, so that anyone can relate to it. So it's not she or him. So
right. I love that.
Yeah.
And you said you were working on it with your mother and your husband. What's the collaboration been like?
So far we're just really talking about what it's like to be Native, what it's like to be non-Native, and care for the planet and want to encourage diversity and Native culture. My husband is non-Native, so he's giving me kind of that perspective. And then my mom, who's a Choctaw elder, is giving me, the storytelling. She's an amazing storyteller. And so she's giving me kind of that Native elder perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. And so have you also started working on the illustrations, or do you kind of do them both at the same time, or are you just focusing on the story and then the illustrations later?
So this is the first time that I've really written, birthed the story and the illustrations. And it's really been the story that's come through first. I haven't really gotten a lot of vision of what the book is going to look like.
Right. I
did have one kind of starting of maybe a book cover for it.
Nice.
Yeah, of a Native child, and it's almost like the hair turns into a white buffalo, so there's like a white buffalo behind this character. But other than that, I don't have a lot of imagery for it.
Oh, well, it's exciting. I mean, it's like we're seeing the work in process, so I can't wait until we get to see the finished product. Do you have an idea of when that might be? Or
I don't have a timeline right now. I have been doing some projects, doing graphic design for other people.
Right.
I've done some more corporate stuff, just doing promotionals for people. And then I also just got to work on a book, designing the book of a friend's artwork and stories. Nice. So laying it out and making it look all pretty. And we're about to send it to print. And it's just a self-published book as of right now.
Well, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because, we've been talking mostly about your illustrations, but you do so much other work. Do you want to talk about maybe some of the other projects or kinds of things that you do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I really love doing the books, so I don't mind talking about that too. Um, I I am also a studio artist, so I do a lot of just portraits and creative expressions, mostly figures with kind of native inspired decoration uh, patterns and multimedia pieces. You
Right.
can check them out on my website. There's not a lot on my Instagram, although I do have some highlighted in my stories. You
Right.
can go there, click on them, and see some of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if watching that it hasn't gone to see her website, you really do. Because I mean, I just spent a lot of time just looking at all. I mean, it's just amazing to scroll through. Although the Instagram is interesting because you have a lot of really cool photography. Do you
yeah,
also, or have you thought about doing photography, or is that just kind of for fun for Instagram? Because you had a lot of really beautiful pieces.
yeah. That's really just kind of a personal thing. I haven't turned it into anything more than just sharing with my Instagram community,
Right,
just kind of how I see the world.
right.
Just want to share with people what I experience, how I see things, and I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
that's kind of
one of
my
the things I
artistic
love.
expression.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I loved about your artistic expression, how you see things, is that you really, from what I've read, is that you wanted to use your art to inspire people and to change the world and to choose love. And so, what do you think is the role that art can do? I mean, specifically, obviously, children's books, illustrations, obviously they can help inspire children or just art in general. What role do you think it has?
Well, let's see. If you look at my artwork and you see the stories that I have done so far, they're all very positive and um, beautiful. I have a couple of pieces that are a little more sad, like um, kind of dealing with the pipeline issue and but there's not a lot of that. It's mainly inspirational and positive, colorful. Just when you look at the piece, you just feel inspired, you feel happy. um, so I just always feel the more that you put out of that, the more it creates,
Mm,
and I find that very important.
right.
And my mom and I were just talking about how storytelling is so important. And as a Native person, that legacy of storytelling and how that gives you a sense of self and it gives you a sense of place. You
Mm,
know, my ancestors have been here for hundreds of thousands of years, and there's just this, like when I say that, when I experience it, I just feel more grounded.
mm,
And I feel like that book with me and Sherri, it was just sharing a different perspective on life,
mm,
not even a different perspective. It's sharing through the visuals, representing our culture and telling a story that pretty much everyone can relate to.
mhm.
And I feel that's important to show people diversity
Right.
and how even in a diverse setting, you can be so relatable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, and that also relates to my next question, which I know you talk about, like the importance of nature and connection to nature, which kind of relates to what you're talking about, like this real sense of place. So
Mhm.
how do you see, like, how does that come out in your art and your illustrations?
um, there's quite a bit of nature elements in all of my artwork,
Mhm.
and I have kind of stayed with traditional media, so it goes from even the content to the
Sorry,
creation of
so
it.
this people that maybe haven't seen it, like some of your work,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
from the this is all from the cloud artist. But go ahead. Sorry, you were talking about how it comes out in the media.
Yeah.
Um, this these pictures. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so it comes through in the imagery that I use, and you know that everything's kind of set in a rural setting, like the Cloud Artist and Little Red Riding Boots, And also then Lela and the butterflies, it's about preserving the butterfly habitat and keeping our pollinators alive. So
Right.
yeah, just choosing stories that really resonate with how I feel about taking care of Mother Earth, and how my mother raised me to care about Mother Earth, to have as little impact as we possibly can in this modern world, which is very challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's such an important message to pass on to children. I mean, that's what's so exciting about children's books, right? Is that you're teaching them when they're very young to have this idea, and especially with the artwork, if they have this visual of it, I think it really sinks into kind of their own mindset or their own perspective.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've started collecting some books from, I can't remember her name. She did The Water Protectors.
Oh,
I
yes.
believe I'm blanking on her name.
Me too.
I've
I know.
taken a lot of inspiration from her. Yeah.
Are there any other, like, what other artists do you look towards that you get inspiration from, or any particular books that, like, I know I've talked to a lot of people about how, there's not as much diversity in children's books as there needs to be, but at least it's better than it was a lot of times when we were kids. Was there a moment, like when you were growing up, when you kind of looked around and said, hey, there aren't many children's books that reflect what my life is like, or, and I know you said your mother was a great storyteller. Did you wonder why you didn't see some of that in the books, or what did you have?
I don't know if I really ever thought that way. I mean, my whole family didn't have a lot of connection to our native roots until my Uncle Aaron. He really started just researching and becoming connected with our Choctaw heritage and learning as much as he possibly could. He is an amazing scholar. And he really helped us to connect and go to gatherings and explore what it was to be Native. And we started going down to a Choctaw gathering in Bakersfield, California. And Bill and Teresa Harrison, they put that on and connected with the Oklahoma Band of Choctaws to really bring that to an amazing state. Yeah, and they still do it every year. I am now in the Pacific Northwest, so I haven't been making it.
Right.
And and really, when we started doing that is when I got connected to my Choctaw heritage. And so as a kid, my mom got me a lot of books by Patricia Polacco. And, she's Polish?
I can't remember.
She does like Polish stories and Russian stories and Jewish stories. So she does different diverse stories. And I have I don't want to say I have all of her books, but I might have all of her books. I really might. So I was really inspired by her. And Barbara Helen Berger. When the Sun Rose, that was one of my favorite books growing up, and I still read it to my son. It's really simple, it's really beautiful. Those are some of the people who really influenced me to be a children's book illustrator.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This is so fun to talk to you. Like I said, we spend a lot of time talking to authors, so it's really fun to kind of see the other side of it, because especially picture books, illustrations are such a major part of it that it's really fun to get to talk to you about this. So.
Oh yeah. Just one last thing. When illustrating a children's book, you were asking about what the challenges were.
Right.
Creating a story and images that span over 32 pages.
Right.
And keeping the characters consistent and looking the same. And if they age, keeping them looking the same but older. And if the seasons change, making sure you get the seasons in the right order. So those are some of the challenges particularly with illustrating a children's book.
Right.
Keeping the consistency over the pages. Yeah.
I'm going to think about that next time we read a story together, because I think there's so much with illustrations that there's so many details that maybe as readers we don't pay attention to, and yet it kind of helps create this world that that we're entering into. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. If you just joined us late, this is going to be up on Instagram in a few minutes, and it'll be on YouTube later. Thank you so much for joining us.
And just a reminder, everybody can go to my page and ask me questions. I'm happy to answer anything you have.
Yeah, and if you haven't checked out her website and her books, please do. It's really worth it.